Hey guys, this is Christina with the Natural State Garden and Homestead. Today I'm going to be cutting up some of my New Dawn rose. I went and got some cuts. Going to do some start to that, and I went out to my favorite parent hydrangea bush. A lot of the hydrangeas in the yard have come from this bush, and we're going to take some cuttings of this. We're going to go ahead and start by Kenny's going to come in and assist me here. We're going to take some cuttings off of this. Was a New Dawn. And a lot of gardening is experimenting, so
this is extremely an experiment. Here it is in January, and we're trying to cut our root wherever you come from, hardwood cuttings on this rose.
Now, a lot of times when I do a rose cutting, because I've cut back my rose bushes in the winter, I'll go ahead and just take a stick and stick it in the ground. Problem is,
thirsty.
Kenny's getting his Herbalife on. Problem is, with these roses, a lot of time it'll go back to the parent plant, so that makes this more of an experiment than a lot of our cuttings. So there is a node here, and that should root, and then we've already cut the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and give it another cut. Okay. And this already has rooting compound on it. I'm going to go ahead and stick. And I use... This is a skewer for shish kebabs or things like that, and I use it, but you want to use something to dowel. I mean, they even make a dowel, actually.
Stick it straight in the dirt.
You don't want to stick it straight in the dirt because it'll wipe off all the root hormone you just put on it. So well, there's two ways of doing it, but this is the way I personally do it. I'm sure it would be fine.
And I always try... Can't see this, you're too far away, I'm sure, but I always try to injure the end of it, and it gives it a reason to callus, and when it calluses, that's what your roots are going to come from. So I just stick it in the rooting hormone, stick it straight in the dirt, and hope for the best. Now, a lot of times people say, well, when I try to root roses, they turn black on me, they turn black and they die. What that is a fungus. So if you have had trouble with that, you get some kind of fungicide, maybe like a neem oil or something like that, and treat your soil, then put your greens, your sticks in there, your cuttings, and you won't have any trouble with the black spot, or the black, the
stem's turning black.
Stem's turning black, the fungus coming up the stem and killing it. Here's a nice little cutting right here. I don't know, I'm gonna get closer and show you.
I
had a knife that was sharp enough to do anything. We got a kitchen knife here. You use what you have. Let me see that, and I'll show them how I do it.
I'm just scraping off some of the edge there. And I'm going to, while he walks around, go ahead and stick mine in the rooting hormone.
But see, I don't know if y'all got an angle in here, if you can see this or not. But see, this is just a rose bud. Here's a little bud coming out of it right here. But I'm going to go right below that bud. See that bud? I'm going to go right below that bud, and I'm going to injure it a little bit. I'm going to injure it. And that right there, with that rooting hormone, what that'll do, that will cause that to create a callus. And once a callus is created, then it'll start rooting. Hardwood cuttings take a long time. It's a lot easier to root things whenever you have some semi-hardwood that's green, that's been growing a couple of months and has got a little bit rigid. The hardwood takes a little bit longer, but a lot of times they will root. Sometimes they won't. But when you get, when you get a good rose clipping, you can take several of these. And if you have a 5% success rate, it's plants you didn't have to buy, right? So, by this being a New Dawn, I really hope that it'll root, just for home use,
We're not reselling these.
We're not reselling them or anything. So,
New Dawn people.
But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put that rooting hormone, just stick it straight in the dirt. And the dirt we're using is probably a little bit rough. It's just a potting soil that was left over from last year.
It had tomatoes in it. But
it does, you got to have good draining soil, but it's got to stay, consistently moist. But it's got to drain. They don't need to sit in water. They will rot, and that'll cause more problems with the fungus. So anyway, that's where we're at.
So there's a cut going in.
Just stick it just straight down to this powder. Pop it right in the ground. And
now I hope that we can come back to this video and see if the ones that I used a dowel for are the ones he just jammed in the ground.
We're going to make any difference.
We'll find out, won't we? Okay, so these are our rose cuttings. What we'll do is just put them on the porch under a clear plastic tub. We've got one over here that we've been using for something else. So the other thing we're going to pot up is some hydrangea. Now there's two ways to root your hydrangeas. So
This one's already
earlier
rooted.
in the season, I bent it over. It was growing much like this. I bent this bit over and tucked just the stem into the dirt. And as you can see, it put on a very good root. And it's already snapped right there. So what we're going to do is cut that and we'll root that. But then we can go down through here and there's actually lots and lots of roots on this stick.
Actually, I'm just going to pot this because it was in the ground, and actually it's just a limb that laid over on the dirt and caused a root, like she said. So I'm just going to actually just pot it and grow it out, and that way, when spring comes, it starts putting its little leaves on. I can just take it and pop it straight in the garden.
And I cannot. What is this one
It's got a
called?
bud on top of it, huh?
What is this one called?
It's a hydrangea. It's just an old blue variety, an old shade variety that blooms off of old wood. That's the hydrangea.
Paniculata?
No, the paniculatas are the long, slim ones that you cut back every year.
Now,
I don't know, but anyway, it's not any fancy new type. It's an old fashioned grandma type hydrangea. Is what it is. So
Ooh, don't talk about my grandma.
we're just gonna stick these in the ground. You know, these that are all beside your grandma's old house back in the day. That's what this is.
Now
So,
I'm looking at this stick. It has a bud on it, but what I'm looking for is for there to be, especially with hydrangeas, when you do it in the winter or late fall, there needs to be some green inside. That way you know your plant is still alive. To know that before you cut it, you can just run your fingernail down the edge, and it is green on the inside. So we're just gonna take and cut these 6 inches. Just kidding. What do you think that is?
it's about a 3-inch cut. Now, most of the time, whenever you root hydrangeas, you know you want them in. You want to get them like in May or June here in this part of the country where they've got their foliage started on them. Then you cut them back, you injure it, put it in your rooting compound, put it in the dirt, and then you take a couple of the leaves off because they just suck water away from it and you really don't need it. And they'll root a lot faster than these hardwoods, but hardwoods will root.
I have
think.
not-
We're going to try. We're going
Well-
to try. Christina's better at this than I am. She may not be better at explaining it, but she's better at doing it. So
A lot of mine is pure luck because I just
trial and error, y'all. Trial and error. That's what gardening
I
is.
just go out in the yard
Hey,
and
if
have,
we could get an extra 2 or 3 hydrangeas plants, if we don't have to spend $35 for it, Lowe's, more power to us, right?
I go out and I have to trim something and I hate for it to go to use or to waste, so I'll stick them in dirt. And if it roots, it roots, and if not, I mean,
We
at
haven't
least
lost
it wasn't.
anything.
Yeah. So the only other thing I do, and I've heard on, can you hand me that Miracle Grow bucket? This is just water. I've heard other people say there's no need to water them after you do this. Others say, yeah, you should. I go ahead and just give it a sip.
Water gives life, right? So they gotta be moist.
Everything just gets a little sip around here. I'm not gonna, there's holes in the bottom. I'm not gonna soak them, and I definitely don't want to wash off that.
That's got Miracle Grow in it.
It's got bits. This bucket was Miracle Grow. It got left out as winter started. See, these are all roots, so we should have cut that a couple more times.
Nah, it's fine. It'll root.
Or you could have went sideways with it.
How's that?
Maybe more.
How's that?
That's perfect, honey.
Good. Well, y'all, that's kind of the way we're doing it. It's just kind of an experiment. Y'all can try it yourselves. I mean, I'll be surprised if we have a lot of success, but we may have a little bit. I mean, what did it take us? 5 minutes to do all that? And we just went out there and snipped a couple of limbs off some of our trees, our rose bush and our hydrangea. And so that's all it took.
If you see this in 6 months or so and you comment, you'll remind me to tell you again how it ended up. But I have some out there in the yard that I rooted last year, and they turned out just fine. And some rose cuttings. There is a rose bush over here by the house that was a rose cutting and ended up turning back into a wild rose. So
Here's a boy, that's hot under that thing. You can't leave it under there.
these are evergreen gardenias that Kenny got me some cuttings for the other day, and I've put up. I need a little water. I've put in these, and I did leave the leaves on them.
Yeah, you got to leave some leaves on them if they've got some greenery. But these right here, we've had them under a black. That's too much. That's too much fertilizer in it. They'll die, I think.
It's mostly rainwater. I'm just gonna give them a sip. But I've had them. Could you bring me that tub? This is the greatest little thing ever. You're gonna be so impressed and think, man, that's expensive. This plastic tub that was previously Christmas decoration storage or something. And then what I'll do is I take it, especially with my cuttings, and just tear stuff up on the way around. And it will go over both. But I've got more of these tubs, and I just put it right over the top. Keeps the frost off, keeps the soil closer to 50 to 70, which is really where you want to keep soil.
But it might get a little mini greenhouse. But you got to make sure on days like today when it's warm and the sun's shining, and we didn't do it, you've got to give it some air, because if you don't, they'll get too hot. And these may have gotten too hot. I hope not.
Here. And there's a hole in the top. There's holes up here where that's how it ended up in the yard, because it was cracked. And it really wasn't great for storing anymore. And so it got cast to the garden, which is where a lot of things end up in our yard.
Anyway, y'all try it. It don't take much time. And, you know, like I say, if you have 5% success, you've succeeded, because that's money you just didn't have to spend on something else to put in your garden.
I will tell you what we're using, and I hate to tell you the brand, but we are using the Garden Safe Take Root. I picked it up at the box store for $5. I've had this 2 years or so. It's about half empty. It doesn't take much. I've spilled it a couple times in the yard. And so, you know, there's a liquid version, and then there's this powder version. And I've used it a lot, and several cuttings later, it still does really good. I told you we cut back our rose bushes, or I think Kenny may have showed you a video of that. And I took some of those cuttings and just jammed them in the dirt. So we'll go back and check on those when spring gets here. But, you know, it's January. There's not a lot of gardening we can do. Well, what we can do is at least
try.
While we're having to cut things back, at least try. You know, save yourself $1 or $2. Now, these hydrangeas will not be, you know, beautiful, bushy, 3-foot bushes for a very long time. So it's going to require a little more patience than the $30 bush down at the box store or your local nursery. But it's yours, and it costs nothing, because the tree needed trimmed back anyway. So that's what we've done today, and definitely drop me any questions, and, you know,
tell me how bad we're doing it. Tell us what we're doing wrong, because we would love to learn how to have 100% success rate. Not going to happen, but we would love to know.
Yeah,
so.
And we did try our hand a minute ago at, what did we do with the...
Oh, we grafted a New Dawn rose to an old-fashioned rose.
Dixie. Yes, I have an old-fashioned one-time bloomer rose that grows on the chicken coop. It's not very pretty after that initial bloom, so we took a couple cuttings from our New Dawn, and we're going to give grafting a go. If it works, we'll show you what we've done. If it is a complete fail, we'll never mention it again. So that's all for today. Thank you guys so much. Remember to like and subscribe, and as always, tell me what I did wrong. Thanks, guys.
Bye.